Most beekeepers think that the problem that demands attention is the one that matters most. That instinct costs bees time and money. Not loudly, but quietly and slowly over time. And it costs us direction. And by direction, I mean the successful beekeeping that we all want. Thriving hives through the season. Today, we're going to be talking about why beekeepers treat the loudest problem instead of the right one. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hive Doctor. We've all been trained to believe that responsible beekeeping looks like a quick and fast response to what we're seeing inside the hive. Movement, action, quick fix. Because if something looks wrong, you do something about it, right? It feels careful and it feels involved. But that instinct can be a high and unrealized cost, and not just once, because our beekeeping will always be a result of our current decision-making process. And if our current decision-making process is not analyzed and investigated, we may end up getting the results that we don't want time and time again. I've seen this scenario play out over and over in my own earlier years in beekeeping, in a lot of my students, and in the beekeeping community in general. And it's always the same result. A loud problem appears, it grabs our attention, and then everything we do pivots around that. And then 2 to 3 months later, the hive fails in a way that we don't, connect back to that original intervention. And it's not because we don't care, but because we cared in the wrong direction. Treating the loudest problem doesn't just cost us in the moment. It changes what we stop seeing instead. It narrows our attention, and it reshapes the rest of our beekeeping season in a direction that we never intended, nor did we want. And once we've committed to chasing noise through a sense of urgency based on symptoms, we abandon reading the small signals that the hive is actually trying to tell us. And the bees never collapse from one bad move. They collapse from a sequence of well-intended ones. Let's illustrate exactly what I'm talking about on my trusty non-digital whiteboard. So right here we're going to illustrate the trajectory of a single colony when the signals become ignored. So what happens is the colony's trajectory is going along, moving through the seasons. Something happens here that we miss. We don't see this signal. As a result of that, the colony veers off course a little bit, and it has to go this way now. This could be a dearth, a lack of resources. It could be a higher mite load. But either way, it's going to send the colony off in this direction. In fact, this could be multiple pressures. It could be a high mite load on top of a dearth. But we don't see the results until this point here. This is when we come in and do a hive inspection. And let's say the time frame between here and here is about 3 weeks, maybe a month. And so we're seeing this, and we're treating this moment in time, this snapshot of a view, based on it alone, without taking into account what happened back here. We don't know why or how they got to this point, but this is where we take action. And so they not only have the pressures of high varroa mite load and a dearth in effect, but now up here they've got the same two pressures in addition to our unnecessary and ill-timed intervention. So now they've got the beekeeper as an added pressure. And now instead of dealing with 2, they're dealing with 3. 1 or 2, the bees can usually balance themselves out. 3 might be a little bit too much, and then we do something, whatever we do here, we come back and check, let's say a week later, and all of a sudden everything looks even worse. Maybe our hive's dead or definitely on the way out. And it's because we didn't take into account all the previous pressures. So this is when we ignore signals. The real question is never, what should I be doing now? based on that sense of urgency in trying to treat a symptom. It's why does this feel urgent? This thing that I'm seeing, why do I have such a sense of urgency to do something about it immediately? That sense of urgency shouts, but signals whisper. Symptoms demand action immediately, and signals always ask for us to slow down and interpret what's going on first before we take action. And most beekeepers don't lose colonies because they missed a symptom. They lose colonies because they never learned which signals were worth responding to. Now here's the hinge. Sometimes the safest move can actually be restraint, a hands-off approach, just a small delay. And it's not because nothing matters, but because not everything deserves intervention. Direction in beekeeping from where our hives are right now to where we want them to be, and where the bees themselves are wanting to be, that direction is set by what we don't react to. So let's go back to our trusty non-digital whiteboard and make that a little bit more clear. All right, so very similar to our earlier hive trajectory illustration, this one's going to show something a little bit different. The hive is going throughout the season, and let's say they're a relatively healthy hive. They've only got one pressure. That could be, let's say, maybe not a lot of nectars coming in, but they can deal with that. They can rebalance from that. They can control the amount of brood they have to take care of based on the resources they know they have. So they're currently in a process of handling things. But let's say right here is that signal that the bees, although they're okay, we misread this as something bad. Oh no, they don't have enough brood. I have to intervene. So then we come in here and intervene unnecessarily. Now, we're going to cover the consequences of this second, but first, let's continue and pretend like we didn't intervene yet, and that this colony, had it been left alone, would have continued, and then because of its health, it's a healthy situation, it had all these possibilities, all these potentials that it could have reached. Let's say a high honey yield, a large population, maybe big enough to split. Maybe you make nukes, break those off. It's just another form of a split. But either way, these are all its potentials because it was healthy. It was rebalancing its own process. Then, part two, back to us intervening, we are interrupting a process that we misread the signal of. And as a result, we end up affecting future potential possibilities of that colony. And so now, because of the added pressure of our intervening unnecessarily, let's say their population wasn't able to get as big because we disturbed the pheromone dispersion in the colony. We messed up their foraging pattern because we started checkerboarding things, and they already had their resources where they wanted them. So now, since we've lost a large population, it means we're not going to be able to collect as much honey as we were able to, because now we don't have the field force to do it. And as a result, they're not going to have the high enough population to split, much less make a nuke. So at best, now we can only hope that we can maintain the colony in a live state enough to get them to winter in some sort of healthy fashion. Now here's an example of reacting to a sense of urgency. Let's say one day you come out, which I have seen this, there's just bees all over the front of this box, floating just on the outside, flying, flittering, and it freaks you out. A beginner beekeeper automatically thinks, oh no, my hive is swarming. And so they immediately get that sense of urgency. I've got to do something about it now. And so what they do is they go into action mode. They go inside the hive, they inspect deeper, they correct things that they think they're correcting, and 9 times out of 10 they come away, even though they did something to correct this sense of urgency in their mind, they still come away with a sense of uncertainty, like, did I do the right thing? Did I do the right thing in time? When in fact it's just a stab in the dark based upon a sense of urgency on reading a symptom rather than a signal, or misreading a signal about what's going on inside the hive. So to take that example a little bit further, whatever we see happening now is a delayed reaction from at least 3 weeks ago. Think about it, all the eggs that are laid in this colony today, we won't see the results of that until 3 weeks from now. So we're always getting a delayed snapshot response from a beehive. So let's say 3 weeks ago, you finished your mite treatment, you got the mite count way low, and all the bees on the outside here are just a result of having a higher population as a result. And these bees are finally old enough to come out and orient on their own colony before they go off and take a cleansing flight. And so kind of freaking out that my bees were about to swarm, not only A, did we misread that signal, but B, we misread and didn't associate that signal with our actions 3 weeks ago. So intervening now unnecessarily, trying to stop everything from happening, doesn't solve anything. It only adds another variable that the bees have to now rebalance against. So here's one thing to remember. Noise in the form of urgency is not information. And if you can remember that, it'll help you begin to react less and observe more before taking action. And then that action is going to be a lot more meaningful and go a lot farther in helping the bee's trajectory doing what they're already doing instead of interrupting it. So good beekeepers look calm because they're selective with their decision-making process. They don't confuse visibility with importance. They don't confuse urgency with relevance. They understand that the bees operate under their own systems based on external and internal signals, small cues that we can learn to read. And systems punish whoever interrupts them without understanding the direction that those systems are going first. The hardest skill in beekeeping isn't knowing what to do. It's knowing when not to do. Now the good news is, well, there's plenty of good news, but part of that is that this way of thinking, this way of decision making isn't seasonal. It's not something you have to change in the spring, the summer, the fall, or even in the winter time, because it applies to all of them. Every time you choose to interpret something rather than immediately react to it, you're managing the direction of your hives successfully rather than the symptomatic outcomes that do not give any of us that sense of belonging and fulfillment that we got into beekeeping for. And direction is decided long before those results ever show up. If you guys would like to reevaluate your own decision-making process and the way that you approach your bees, check out my coaching session down below in the description to learn more. See you guys in the next video. Hive Doctor out.